Dust hung in the arena like a low, gritty fog, catching the morning light and turning it gold. The crowd, a mass of shifting shadows behind the stadium's shimmering force fields, roared as the gates ground open. From the tunnel's darkness emerged a lone figure, slender but taut with tension, the heavy clang of her shackles echoing over the sand. Kaela did not flinch. The chains were ornamental now, an illusion of restraint, more for the audience than for control. They wanted to see her break her limits. That was a thrill, a fighter forced into survival, with barely enough to defend herself. That she had lived this long only fed the myth. Some called her the last flame. Others simply watched, betting on how many seconds it would take for her to fall. She stood tall, chin up, jaw tight. Her suit clung like a second skin, black and reinforced at the joints, though the scratches and plasma burns told stories of older matches. She wasn't supposed to last more than a week in this hell. That had been 90 days ago. Across the arena, armored gates hissed open again, releasing a trio of hulking figures. Hulviks, Apex-enhanced hybrids bred for spectacle. Their shoulders twitched with cybernetic implants, claws surgically replaced with vibrating steel. They bled static and rage. Kaela had faced one once, barely survived. Now they sent 3. She exhaled slowly, her breath misting in the morning air. The apex predators, high in their observation towers above, sipped crimson wine and leaned forward. Their entertainment had arrived. The signal fired, an electric shriek across the arena walls, and the Hulviks charged. Kaela dropped to a crouch, her mind already calculating. The chains around her wrists could extend or retract on magnetic command, but their primary function now was weight resistance. She twisted, using the momentum of her roll to bring the chains up in a sweeping arc. The first Hulvik met the spinning iron and stumbled sideways, surprised. It didn't buy her much, just a breath, but in this place, breaths were everything. She pivoted low, used the chain slack to hook the second beast's ankle. A yank, a shift, it slammed into the third. Noise erupted. Cheers, laughter, the wet crack of something breaking. Pain flared in her ribs as claws raked across her side. She screamed and pushed through it, her left chain coiling around the third Hulvik's arm. She yanked. It staggered. She threw herself forward, elbow first, smashing into its throat. The second Hulvik, recovered, barreled at her. Too close. She rolled, backward this time, letting the chain go slack. The creature tripped, just as she meant it to. Her foot met its jaw mid-fall. A clean connection. It didn't rise again. Minutes passed in the space of seconds. Then silence. Kaela stood in the center of the arena, heaving, blood on her hands, not all of it her own. Her chains hung loose, one dragging in the dust. Above, the apex tower lights pulsed. White, then gold. Approval. She didn't care. A voice crackled in her ear, male and smug. Another day, Flame. They'll start to think you're a goddess. Kaela winced. Let them. The gates opened again, not for combat this time, but for escort. A pair of drones hovered close, weapons humming, as 2 armored handlers stepped forward. One of them, the taller, smirked. Back to your kennel, mutt. She didn't answer. She never did. Words were wasted on shadows. The tunnels were cold, wet with condensation, and echoing with distant screams. They twisted like veins beneath the stadium, separating victors from corpses. Her path was well worn by now. Left, down, second level, isolation cell 47. Not quite solitary. Not anymore. They shoved her through the doorway, and the lights flared, scanning her biosignature. Inside, another figure sat cross-legged against the far wall. Young, male, eyes like shattered glass. Thought you weren't coming back, he muttered. Kaela slid down against the opposite wall, clutching her side. Neither did I. He watched her, silent. Then, after a moment, they've started calling you a prophet in Block C. Kaela let out a bitter laugh, then winced again. Then Block C's worse off than I thought. The boy's name was Ren, a mechanic's son from the outer rings, arrested for sabotage and thrown into the arena when his father's influence bought out. He'd survived 2 matches. Not with strength, but with speed and a terrifying willingness to bite off ears. They weren't supposed to speak. The cells were monitored. But everyone knew the apex rarely listened, only watched. Rin stood, handed her a strip of cloth. "You're bleeding again." She took it, nodding thanks. They didn't speak for a while. Kaela's mind drifted, not to the battle, but to before, to the night of the raid. She could still feel the heat of her village burning, the press of boots, the quiet deaths. She had run, carrying coded data meant for the rebellion's last outpost. She'd failed, captured at the eastern wall, beaten, stripped, and tossed into this arena as punishment. She never even knew if the message got through. That failure stayed with her, more than the chains. She looked up. Rin had returned to his corner, scrawling something into the concrete with a shard of metal. A mark, a pattern. She frowned. "That symbol," she said. "Where did you learn it?" He paused, then shrugged. "Saw it once. When I was fixing a transmitter back home. Rebel tag, right?" Her breath caught. It was more than that. It was a tag she had carved into the casing of the data drive the night she fled. A signal, a signature. Hope flared, dangerous, reckless. "Do you remember the coordinates?" Rin turned, eyebrow raised. "You serious?" She nodded, for the first time in weeks. Her voice trembled. "Deadly." He studied her a moment longer, then slowly nodded. Kaela leaned back, ignoring the throb in her side. If the symbol survived, someone had found the message, which meant the rebellion might still breathe, which meant she hadn't failed. Not completely. Above, in the apex chambers, the predators debated her next match. They spoke of genetics, of endurance curves, of implant triggers and hormone adjustments. One of them, an elder with silver eyes, leaned in closer to the screen. "She's different," he said. "Still dangerous. Still thinking." "Then break her," said another. The elder smiled. "No, let's make her believe she's winning." In her cell, Kaela slept with one eye open, hand wrapped around her chain, and hope twisting like a knife in her chest. The dreams came in fragments. A flash of red cloth in the wind, the scent of rust and ozone, her sister's laughter, high and strange, cut short by the thunder of boots. Kaela woke gasping, the dim light of the cell blinking like a pulse overhead. The wound on her side had crusted, tender to the touch. She ignored it. Rin was awake already, seated near the door, humming a slow, tuneless melody as he traced lines in the dust. "You were talking in your sleep?" he said without looking up. Kaela sat up slowly, rubbing her temple. "What did I say?" "Nothing useful. Just names." She didn't ask which ones. Memory was fickle now, shadows half-remembered, sounds misfiled. It was returning in jigsaw pieces, unwelcome and necessary. She didn't trust it, but she couldn't look away either. "They're moving people," Rin said, voice lower now. "Sectors A and F. Saw a line of them yesterday through the grates. Tighter patrols. Even the guards look spooked." "Executions?" Kaela asked. "Not this time. They're scared of something." He tapped the wall beside him. Heard a rumor. Someone escaped. A handler's throat cut in his sleep. Power relays shorted. Took out 3 guards and disappeared into the pipes. Kaela's eyes narrowed. "That's not escape. That's sabotage." "That's what I thought." Her mind raced. The arena had a system, rotations, punishments, maintenance runs. But if someone had truly escaped, even momentarily, then there was a flaw, an opening. And if there was one, Rin continued, "They're calling her the Rat Queen. Someone said she used to be Apex-born, modified, defected. Do you believe that?" "No, but I believe she's out there. And she's trying to break something big." Kaela stood. The ache in her body felt duller now, distant. "How do we find her?" Rin smiled. "That's the right question." Later that day, the guards came for her again. No warning, no announcement. Just the hiss of the cell unlocking and 2 armed drones flanking her before she could even speak. They said nothing. Dragged her through corridors she didn't recognize. New paths. Cold light. Fewer cameras. They brought her to a room she hadn't seen before. Circular. Sterile. A single chair in the center. And a man. He was Apex. Kaela knew it instantly. Not by his eyes, which were as pale as bleached bone, but by the way he stood, like the air bent to accommodate him. "Kaela," he said, smiling as if they were old friends. "You've been very interesting." She didn't respond. He circled her slowly. "Your file says you were part of the Severance Cell, that you carried classified data across enemy lines during the fall of Trillium Spire, that you refused interrogation, killed 4 of our men, and yet, here you are, alive." Still she said nothing. "You're not like the others. You think, you adapt, you win." Kaela met his gaze. "So what is this? A compliment or a warning?" He smiled again, more genuinely. "An invitation." She blinked. "You survived longer than any natural-born fighter in the pits. That's not chance. That's evolution. And we admire evolution. So I'm offering you something different." He gestured, and a small projection unfolded beside him. An image, her, fighting. A dozen clips, one after the next. Her victories, her cunning, her resilience. You become an icon. Even among our kind, there are whispers. The flame who won't die. He paused. "What if you didn't have to die at all?" She stared at him. "You want me to join you?" "No. I want you to survive. Join, resist. It doesn't matter. The war is over, Kaela. But the story isn't. You could be more than this." She stepped forward, chains clinking. "And what do you get?" He leaned closer. "Control. You inspire chaos. That's dangerous. But a controlled symbol, one that burns where we point her, that's invaluable." She didn't move. "And if I refuse?" His smile vanished. "Then we burn you out. Slowly. Publicly." Silence stretched between them. "I want to speak to the Rat Queen," Kaela said at last. The Apex's eyes flickered. "She doesn't exist." "I think she does." He stepped back, his voice colder. "You think what we let you think. Remember that." The door hissed open behind her. The guards returned. Back in the cell, Kaela said nothing for hours. She lay awake, tracing the Apex's words in her mind, dissecting every syllable. "They want you scared," Rin said finally. "That's why they talk." "They want a weapon," Kaela murmured. "But they don't know what I am." Rin nodded toward the dust. "You ever finish a war?" Kaela looked at him. "No." "Then maybe it's time." The next day, Kaela found a mark in the dirt outside the mess hall. A curved slash, hidden under layers of boot prints. She paused just long enough to brush it clean. The symbol again. She knelt, tracing it with one finger. A small, almost imperceptible arrow extended from it, pointing northeast, toward the waste processors. That night, she made her move. She and Rin slipped away during filtration cycle, crawling to the grease-slick ducts as alarms howled in the distance. Triggered, she hoped, by the Rat Queen. The route was suffocating, hot with steam and metal. They emerged behind the incinerator silos, breathless, limbs burning. There, waiting, was a woman in ragged combat gear. Her left eye was mechanical. Her skin bore the scars of deep experimentation, and she held a shock blade at her side with the ease of someone who had used it more times than she'd care to count. "You're late," the woman said. Kaela straightened. "You're real. Only when it matters," the Rat Queen replied. "You want to bring this place down?" Kaela nodded. "Then listen close. We don't have much time." The Queen pulled a battered data module from her pack. "These are the schematics of the arena's core systems. Barrier controls, power cycles, drone relays. You got friends inside. You just don't know them yet." Kaela took the module. Rin leaned forward. "Why give this to her?" "Because they broke me," the Queen said, eyes sharp. But she still believed something could be fixed. Kaela looked up at the silo walls. The arena was a prison, but also a stage. Everything was about the illusion. Break the illusion, and you break control. "We hit them where they broadcast," she said, "in front of everyone." The Queen smiled for the first time. "Exactly." From somewhere above, a siren began to wail. The Queen vanished into the shadows without a word. Kaela and Rin ran, back through the ducts, back into the maze. By morning, they were returned to their cells, soaked in sweat, data module hidden beneath a panel of the floor. The lights dimmed. Kaela stared at the ceiling, the faint outline of the arena tower flickering in her mind. They thought they could shape her into a symbol. They were right, just not the one they wanted. The days that followed unfolded like an inhale before a scream, tight, trembling, waiting. Kaela moved through the corridors with a new stillness, as if her mind was too loud for her body to follow. The data module, now carefully dissected and hidden in parts across several cells, was no longer just a blueprint. It was a map to dismantle everything. Each fighter she passed, every broken soul bent under chains or pain, was cataloged. Not all could be trusted. Most had been broken too long, but there were some. She could see it in their posture, the flickers of rebellion they tried to mask. She began whispering at night, one sentence at a time, a symbol drawn on a wall, a word dropped in passing. The flame lives. Rin handled the technical infiltration. Disguised as idle conversation, he decoded relay cycles, mapped guard rotations, learned when the drone shields would be weakest during the grand blood sport. Kaela handled the people. The guards began to notice her differently. Not wary, not yet suspicious. Curious. Their reports, she guessed, now included details beyond combat. Her influence was growing. And still, they let her walk. The apex above didn't understand how revolutions were born. They believed in control, in dominance. But control was only strong when invisible. And Kaela? She'd become the flicker they thought they'd extinguished. Her next match was unannounced. No morning drills. No briefing. The guards came for her in silence and brought her into the arena under a sky choked with ash. The stadium was quieter than usual. Not empty, but subdued, expectant. She stood alone in the center, no opponent in sight. Then the floor split open. A platform rose, carrying a cage. And inside, slumped in chains, was a woman Kaela had never seen before, but recognized instantly. Her eyes were pale, her face scarred at the temple, and her wrist bore the same emblem Kaela had once carved into the rebellion's final beacon. Commander Tessa Vale. Alive. Kaela's throat went dry. Tessa had been a leader during the Resistance's final stand. Rumors said she died holding the last data conduit in the northern sectors. Kaela had worshipped her, modeled her tactics on the woman's maneuvers. Seeing her now, beaten, sedated, broken, sent something cold curling inside her. The apex voice thundered across the arena, translated into a dozen dialects. Today, the flame faces a legacy. Let's see which burns brighter. The cage hissed open. Tessa stumbled out, blinking slowly. Her posture was wrong, slack, uncertain. They had done something to her. Drugs, implants, or worse. Kaela stepped forward. Tessa. The woman didn't answer. She stared, confused, then raised her fists sluggishly. They want me to kill her, Kaela realized. They want to make me extinguish my past. Tessa lunged, not with force, but reflex. Kaela ducked, caught her by the forearms. It's me, she said softly. Kaela, from the southern line. You used to quote the Red Treatise to keep us awake during surveillance runs. Tessa faltered. Kaela pressed closer. You told me we could burn down the stars if we believed hard enough. Tessa's lips moved. A whisper. Burn stars. Something clicked behind her eyes. Recognition. Faint but fighting. That was when the drone fired. Kaela shoved her sideways. The blast scorched the ground where Tessa had been standing. A second drone dropped from the air. Sniper class. The Apex weren't interested in a fight. They wanted a display. A mercy kill. A narrative. Kaela spun, her chain wrapping around the first drone's armature. She yanked, dragged into the ground, and crushed its lens under her boot. Sparks leapt like insects. The crowd screamed confusion, excitement, fear. Tessa crawled, trying to rise. Another shot fired. Kaela caught her arm and pulled her behind a shattered pillar from an earlier match. She's not fully broken. Kaela growled into her mic. They tried, but she remembers. She remembers. Rin's voice crackled back. Copy. Relay systems overloaded. They're trying to mute the feed. You got 60 seconds before blackout. Kaela didn't hesitate. She stood tall, dragging Tessa with her, and stared into the sky-mounted cameras. "They told you we were animals," she shouted. "They told you we were made for this. That chains were all we knew." Tessa looked up, lips trembling. Kaela raised her voice. "But we remember what freedom tasted like. And if you're watching this, know that memory still lives. In me, in her, in all of us." The feed cut to static. 30 seconds later, the guards arrived, weapons hot. No ceremony this time. They dragged both women back through the tunnels. Kaela didn't fight. She had planted the match. That night, the barracks pulsed with murmurs. She spoke, they said. She called them liars. And they didn't kill her. More symbols appeared on walls. The next morning, Kaela woke to find an offering outside her cell. A rusted bolt with sharpened edge slipped beneath the door. No note, no explanation. But she understood. Someone was listening. 2 days before the grand bloodsport, Rin broke into the drone command relay. It wasn't graceful. The alarm tripped halfway through, and Kaela had to engage 2 guards in the armory just to keep them away from his position. The corridor echoed with metal on bone, her chains soaked in blood, her ribs screaming. When he emerged, panting and smeared with oil, he held up the drive. "Feed injected. We've got full control of the drone signal. For 30 minutes. Kaela wiped her brow. "Then that's all the time we'll need." The grand blood sport was tradition, a public purge disguised as celebration. Every year, a chosen set of champions were pitted against apex-engineered horrors for the amusement of the masses. It was televised across systems, unfiltered, uncut. This year, Kaela volunteered. They didn't even hesitate. Of course she would fight. That was the game now. But the apex didn't see the pieces moving beneath them. The morning of the event, Kaela stood in the prep chamber, flanked by handlers, her body wired for biometric tracking. Tessa, still recovering, was secured in the med bay, surrounded by rebel agents planted over the last month. Fighters Kaela had rallied in silence. Rin stood above the arena, in a blind tech hub carved into the comm towers, waiting for her signal. The gates opened. She stepped out into a roar louder than any she'd heard before. The stadium was packed. The air smelled of metal and nerves. In the center of the arena, her opponent waited. A war beast clad in armor, bred for massacre, its breath clouding the air like smoke. Kaela walked forward calmly, chain dragging behind her, the eyes of 1,000 watching, not for blood, but for something else. A moment, then she looked up and smiled. She raised her hand. 1, 2, 3 fingers. Far above, Rin flipped the switch. The light snapped to black, and the chains began to fall. The darkness felt like a judgment, complete, absolute. For the first time in memory, the arena stilled. The hum of drones died. The tracking implants flickered into silence. The crowd murmured, confused. The apex chambers above surged into motion, commanders barking for diagnostics, for power restoration, for order. But it was already gone. Kaela stood in the pitch, the silence heavy on her skin, like breath held too long. The chains, once welded to her armor, clattered to the floor with a sound that echoed beyond metal. It was a sound of finality. Around the edge of the arena, fighters rose from their cells. Gates opened where they shouldn't. Locks clicked open. Lights pulsed not with control, but with rhythm. A pattern. A call. The war beast before her growled, confused in the sudden dark. Its lenses flickered. Blind now, Kaela didn't wait. She moved. She slid beneath its sweeping claws, the heat of its breath washing over her like steam from a dying engine. In one fluid motion, she wrapped the free chain around its hind leg and vaulted up its back. The creature bucked, spinning. She tightened the grip and jerked. A sickening snap of servos. The beast collapsed onto its side, sparking and writhing. She stood above it, panting, arms streaked with grime and blood. The feed, hacked and rerouted by Rin, snapped back online across thousands of channels. Not the Apex's carefully orchestrated angles, not the stylized lensing. Raw, unfiltered. The camera showed her. Unchained. Victorious. Not a weapon. Not a prisoner. A symbol. Her voice rang across the system, hijacked directly into the broadcast. This is not your show anymore. You made me your myth. Now I make you my ruin. Uproar swept through the crowd. Some screamed. Others cheered. Inside the towers, panic spread. The Rat Queen, real name Alira Voss, initiated Phase 2 from deep within control servers. Firewalls collapsed. Doors opened. Sedated fighters awoke in arms caches. Implants purged. The arena, once a stage for violence, became a battlefield for freedom. Kaela sprinted toward the south gate, where the walls shimmered with the last of the internal defense fields. Her breath tore in ragged bursts. Rin's voice crackled in her ear. Backup batteries online in 8 minutes. After that, we lose the signal and the doors close again. How many made it? She asked. Enough. It wasn't a number, but it was hope. She reached the gate and slammed her palm into the override. Sparks showered as old systems tried to fight. Then the shield blinked and died. Behind her, a wave of liberated fighters surged forward. Tessa among them, still pale but eyes sharp now, alert. She carried a plasma spear and a purpose. Kaela nodded. You're with me? Tessa grinned, blood on her lip. Always. They pushed through the gate. The outer compound was chaos. Automated turrets turned in slow arcs, confused by scrambled friend-foe IDs. Security drones spiraled and fell from the sky, hacked by rebel code. Apex guards, elite but unprepared, clustered around the main elevators to the spire. Kaela didn't need to fight alone now. Around her, the others descended. What followed was not elegant. It was rage. Years of captivity unleashed in coordinated ferocity. Dull fists broke precision armor. Chains became weapons. Words became war cries. Kaela fought like fire, untamed, rolling through ranks, flanked by allies who once feared her. She didn't see the cameras anymore, didn't speak into them. She didn't need to. The message had already been sent. By the time they reached the elevator tower, bodies lay strewn across the platform. Kaela and Tessa rode the lift up, hearts pounding, silence between them electric. Above, in the command chamber, the Apex watched them ascend. They've destabilized core control. One whispered. They're inside the neural link grid. We're exposed. The elder Apex stood, his silver eyes dim with disbelief. We bred her to fight, not to think, not to lead. She did both, another replied. And now they're watching. All of them. The chamber doors exploded inward. Kaela stepped through the smoke. The Apex, once gods in glass towers, backed away as if distance could save them. She didn't raise a weapon. Not at first. I want you to know what it feels like, she said, to have your future rewritten without permission. They didn't answer. One reached for a hidden blaster. Tessa fired first. The weapon discharge lit the room for a moment like lightning. When silence returned, there were only the survivors. Kaela among them. She moved to the central console. Monitors still fed the outside world. Whole systems were watching. Silent. Expectant. Kaela looked into the lens. You watched us suffer. You cheered. You called it justice. Entertainment. Nature. She leaned in. But the truth is, we were your mirror. And now we're cracking it. She stepped back. Alira's voice came through. Core detonation initiated. You got 3 minutes to clear the spire. Kaela didn't hesitate. She ran. The descent was faster, a blur of steel and smoke. Alarm screamed. The floor trembled. By the time they reached the evac shuttle, an old smuggling rig modified for short bursts, half the fighters had already loaded. Rin was there, his face bruised, smiling with disbelief. You really did it. No, Kaela said, helping Tessa board. We all did. Above, the spire cracked. Then the explosion came, not the bright flash of fire, but a bloom of shattering steel, a control undone. The arena, once eternal, collapsed into smoke and flame. The shuttle rocketed into the clouds, Kaela at the viewport. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She watched the fire burn until it was a flicker, until it was only smoke. Tessa appeared beside her. What now? Kaela breathed in. The air still tasted like ash. But it was hers. We find the others. We rebuild the message. We make sure they never forget what happened here. And somewhere in the distance, under another sky, another city would awaken. This time ready